Casey wants to weigh in on the chair debate. Do you stand or sit at the bar?
Casey Joyner is with us here on the Sports Match 97.3 ESPN. I like to stand, Casey. What kind of drinker are you? Do you drink? I don't even know if you drink.
I'll have an occasional libation. I would say, I just got to hang out with Bob Backlund, former WB champion Bob Backlund, not so long ago, and he's such an advocate of, like, healthy living and getting exercise. Like, it's all I can think of now is getting exercise, and standing up is healthier. See, so there you go.
There you go. Yep. See, I like to be active. I want to stand up. I want to move. I don't want to be sitting down. At Standing Up and Moving, we're ready for the start of the NFL season. Casey Joyner's breaking down the schedule with us here, looking at all the key matchups for week number 1, getting his take on the matchups that can be exploited in some of these games. Let's start with tonight, Casey, and get your thoughts on Trevor Siemian against Cam Newton. Sounds like a mismatch, is it?
From a quarterback perspective, it's a mismatch, but again, Trevor Siemian is not going to be facing the Denver defense, and Cam Newton is. And for all that Carolina can do, Carolina, they do well on vertical passes against weak matchups, but if you look at Cam Newton's production last year when he faced a tough matchup, the tougher the matchup, the worse his numbers were. That's why his Super Bowl performance wasn't exactly a surprise. So you're talking a road game, tough defense. I wouldn't be surprised to see both teams run the ball a whole lot, and that kind of nullifies the advantage that Carolina would have there. In fact, it could nullify a lot of it.
I feel like Carolina isn't getting the attention as the defending NFC champions. Like, this is a young roster, a lot of guys back, very good defensively. Over 500 points scored last year. They're getting Benjamin back. Why is it? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Do you feel like Carolina is like kind of not getting the attention maybe they deserve?
I think they probably are. I think people are wondering if that team is truly what they look like they were last year, or if they were a flash in the pan. Because now Norman's gone, and they've got a really great offense, but it's almost all Cam. And remember, at the halfway point of last season, I'll use a fantasy number on this one here. At the halfway point of last season, Cam Newton was tied for 7th among quarterbacks in fantasy points. And so I think a lot of people take that perspective and things they look and go, wow, he wasn't doing a fantastic job. He was doing a very good job, and not a fantastic job at the midway point of the season. And, he had a bunch of great matchups later in the season and got on a roll, but people were wondering, is that just a half-season roll for him and this team, or, is that going to be par for the course? And that's why I think if they lay an egg tonight or don't show up and play well tonight and lose this game against Trevor Siemian, I think people are going to have those question marks about Carolina are getting even bigger.
How about Denver on that side? Siemian is the quarterback. This is the defending Super Bowl champions. I still think it's pretty crazy that they're going with him, but can they justify it? Are they good enough to go with a guy who's a complete unknown?
If you look at their quarterback metrics last year, you can pretty much pick your metric, and if they're not in the bottom quarter of the league, they're probably worse. They're probably near the bottom of the league in nearly every quarterback metric. And it wasn't a matter of whether they had good quarterbacking play part of the season. Typically speaking, Denver just had some mediocre quarterback play all season long. If their defense plays as well or even close to as well as they did last year, and they can get their running game going better than they did last year, I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl with Siemian, but to be a contender, they can absolutely do it. Kentucky, they nearly carried Osweiler to that last year, and I'm still not convinced that he's a playoff caliber, Super Bowl caliber quarterback.
All right, so Carolina, Denver tonight. It's on 97.3 ESPN. It's a rematch of the Super Bowl. Denver won it last year. Carolina's a favorite on the road to open up the season. Who do you like tonight?
Yeah, I actually have Denver just because it's at home, and I think a lot of things are in their favor. And Cam hasn't looked too good this preseason, so I don't think he's gonna. If he hits big plays, maybe he'll change from what he's been doing. But I think he's not going to hit the big plays. If he doesn't hit the big plays, Carolina doesn't win the game. So I got Denver.
All right, let's look at the schedule. I'm looking forward to a lot of your insight on some of these games, especially this first one. You picked Jacksonville on the air Tuesday to win the AFC South. Well, if they're going to be for real and be a division champion, they would look a lot better if they won this game at home against Green Bay on Sunday. So Packers, Jacksonville, break that one down, because I was intrigued when you said you had Jacksonville winning. And when I saw this game, I said, I got to get your take on if Jacksonville's ready for a game like this.
I think that Jacksonville, because their defensive changes, because the big improvement for them was on the defensive side of the ball. They had a lot of talent at all the levels. It is going to take probably a few games for that talent to gel. And if let's put it this way, I think that Jordy Nelson's going to be healthy, and if he is, I got Green Bay winning a shootout in this game, maybe 35-31. If Nelson turns out to not be what he was, Jacksonville wins this game. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a little bit of a step back from Green Bay, because I think Jacksonville will win a lot of games this year, and I think they will make the playoffs. But it is going to take a few games for that defense to get it to where it needs to be.
So you like Green Bay on the road?
I do like Green Bay on the road slightly, though. I think a really high-scoring game. I think the over-under in that game is 48. I wouldn't be surprised to see these teams put up at least 60.
All right, a couple other interesting games around this league, where we kick off there's not a lot of high marquee matchups, in especially the 1 o'clock games here, but here's one that I find interesting. Cincinnati and the Jets. All right, I like Cincinnati. A lot of people the last couple of days are like, Cincinnati's lost some guys. Their run is kind of done. I like Cincinnati still. I think they play really good defense. I think Dalton, is a winner. I don't know that he's great, but he's a winner. This Jets team, their schedule is daunting. If they're going to be a playoff team, they got to win a home game like this against a good team. So give me your thoughts on Bengals-Jets, because I think this week 1, this could be a game you're looking back at wild card, in December and saying, man, the winner of that game could be the one that gets in.
Absolutely. The problem for the Jets is Fitzpatrick. When you look at his production, Fitzpatrick's numbers, it's odd. Usually a quarterback will if he's got like really good receivers, his numbers will be as good as his good receivers, or maybe only slightly worse. The Jets top receivers had really good numbers, but Fitzpatrick's numbers, if you're looking at a quality basis, were just abysmal last year, or really bad. Maybe not bottom of the league, but like bottom quarter of the league. I mean, not good. I think he holds that offense back. I think he's going to hold that offense back this week, and I think it's going to be a situation where Cincinnati's going to get better quarterback play, get better home run hitters. I think that New York leaning on Forte. Hey, Forte started to hit the wall last year. His production really dropped off on a quality basis. He had his worst good blocking yards per attempt of his career. So I think that you're going to find that Cincinnati is going to have bigger play players at a number of different levels, and when you combine those together, I think that'll pull off the road victory.
Cincinnati road victory. I like that. That would help me out with my pick with Cincinnati winning the division there. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. All right, a couple other interesting games, intriguing games, if you will. How about this one? It's funny because everybody with Andrew Luck, is he great? Is he overrated? Is he hurt? Do you think the Colts at home against Detroit, which here's another guy in Matthew Stafford, 2 number 1 overall picks facing off against each other, who have been somewhat, Stafford, how does he handle not having Calvin Johnson there? Was Johnson a reason why Stafford has been putting up big numbers? So I find that game to be pretty interesting.
It looks like that Johnson was put up some great numbers. Can't take anything away from him, but one of the things that happened last year is the Lions had to move Golden Tate to the inside. I'd moved into the slot, and he's not cut out to be a slot receiver. He puts up really great numbers when you get him on the outside, but you put him down the middle, and it's just not his thing. So they're going to be able to move him out to the outside now they got Bolden. So he's going to step up. If he doesn't equal what Johnson did on both a workload and a quality and a quantity basis, I think he'll come close. And plus, they got. When you add those together, I have a feeling that Detroit's going to be able to put up a lot of points this year. I still have Indianapolis winning this game, and it's really tough. I took them basically because they're at home, but I don't trust their secondary, and I think Luck will do very well this year, but I think the Colts are going to be taking a step back. But I have a feeling, again, that's going to be another. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of high-scoring games this weekend, this being one of them, and Colts maybe winning 30-28.
All right, one more before we get to some of the high-profile games. We'll look at the NFC East games as well. Here's one for you that is interesting to me as well, and that is when you look at Oakland. Oakland going on the road. Some people think that Oakland is ready. A lot of people like the direction of that team. New Orleans, I don't know that that's a playoff team there, but they're tough in that dome. But is this a kind of a measuring stick kind of game for Oakland to start the season?
It is, and I've got actually this. I grade matchups by a number of different metrics and things. And as far as quarterbacks go, I've got Drew Brees as having the second toughest matchup of any quarterback this week. That's how good I think the Oakland defense is. They've got some really good guys at cornerback. They've built up their safety core, and their first round pick is not even going to be starting. That's how good their safety core is right now. Oakland can run the ball a lot on offense. They can, and they'll be able to power run the ball against New Orleans and really slow that game down. And I like a lot of elements for Oakland in this game, and I think they are going to go to New Orleans and win. I don't want to say handily, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them win by double-digit points because I just think New Orleans has way too many weaknesses, and Oakland is a team that is not that far from being a true Super Bowl contender.
Casey, you mentioned a minute ago that you thought there could be a lot of high-scoring games this weekend, and I know the folks that run NBC try to get their high-profile game. That Patriots-Cardinals game in the marquee slot of Sunday night, 8:30, national game. What kind of style of game do you think that's going to be?
I think New England's going to try and slow the game down as much as they can. They've got a good defense, and if they had to, not get in a shootout, but I mean, if they had to get in that kind of a situation, they could match up well with Arizona's defense. But I don't think they want to be in that situation. Gronkowski's banged up. They say it might even be a coach's decision as to whether or not he plays. So now you've got Brady out of your lineup, you've got Gronk out of your lineup. This is not the kind of situation you're going on the road against an Arizona team that has a very high-powered offense. I think it's going to be, can New England slow the game down? And I don't think they'll be able to slow the game down enough to get Arizona out of their game plan. And Arizona's going to be able to go vertical and hit some big plays. And if Arizona hits even just one or two big plays, if Gronk's either slowed or not playing in that game, I just don't think New England has the firepower to keep up. So I think Arizona's going to be able to, I think maybe they win this game 28-17, something like that.
And not one but two games on Monday Night Football. The league likes to do that, play an early game at 7:10 and a late game at 10:20. That early game, Steelers at the Redskins. A lot of people picking the Redskins as maybe the win the NFC East. What are your thoughts on that Steelers-Redskins matchup?
I think that Washington's going to do a lot better this year because they've got now a vertical threat in Deshaun Jackson. As long as he's healthy, they'll be okay on the vertical passes, because if you take quarterbacks and you measure how many short touchdown passes versus how many long touchdown passes they have, that's how far the ball travels in the air. Short passes is 10 or fewer yards, longer passes or anything over 10 yards. Only Tom Brady had more short pass touchdowns versus long pass touchdowns than Cousins. So Washington will want to get vertical, and they'll want to get the vertical game going through Jackson. They'll be able to do so to an extent against Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh's got banged up secondary. But you don't want to get in a shootout with Pittsburgh. Even without Le'Veon Bell, they've got so many weapons on that offense. I think Pittsburgh's going to try and get that game, though, to be in a shootout mode, and I think they're going to be successful in doing that. And I think they're going to go to Washington and pull off a pretty convincing victory.
Let's stay inside the NFC East with Casey Joyner, ESPN.com NFL Insider, breaking down this week's Week 1 schedule. Obviously, you got the two games, the two teams inside the NFC East playing each other, Giants and Cowboys. The Cowboys are tough because of the quarterback situation, but they got the running back. Dez is healthy for the most part. He's been cleared of that concussion. The Giants made a lot of changes on defense. This is the kind of game that can set the tone for one of these seasons, because this division is going to be wide open. So how do you, what's this matchup look like to you, and who do you like on that one?
I think that the Cowboys are going to have – there's going to be a situation this year where a couple years ago they won the division because they were able to protect their defense, but they also had options to say, if we can't protect our defense, at least we can get in a shootout game and win. I like Dak Prescott. I think he's going to be a much improved – I think he's going to be very good this year. I think he's much improved over what they had last year, but the idea that he'll be able to keep up with the Giants and say, okay, now you've got Dak Prescott throwing to Bryant, or you've got Eli throwing to Odell Beckham. You've got Eli throwing to maybe Sterling Shepard, who's a rookie who could do very well. And you've got the Giants versus the Cowboys rush defense. As bad as the Giants were defensively, they've made a lot of improvements, and I think they're probably going to be a step ahead of the Cowboys. And secondary-wise, I think Dallas has a couple of green-rated players. I mentioned those earlier. Those are players you go after in the secondary, matchups you can target. The Cowboys have a couple of those. And I think both teams, I think this is going to be another one of those high-scoring games. I just like, if I'm going to the high-scoring game, I'd rather take the veteran quarterback I know has done it versus the rookie I think can do it. So I get Eli winning that one.
All right, that's the 4 o'clock Sunday game. That Washington game that Pete referenced is a Monday night game. And we'll dive into the other Monday nighter real fast, because that's going to be Chip Kelly's debut in San Francisco against a L.A. returning. Of course, they're not playing at home, but the first time the Rams have played as the Los Angeles Rams in some time. But they're going to do it with their number 1 overall pick on the bench. So Kelly's outfit, do you think he makes some changes here with this 49ers team? Or if he does what he did in Philly, could it get real ugly for the Niners?
I think the Niners are the most talent-challenged team in the league. They've got problems in their offensive line. They've got maybe the worst receiving core in the league. Hyde is already banged up, and there's huge question marks. They'll want him to be a bell cow because, Sean McCoy hadn't rushed 300 times in a season prior to joining Kelly, and he does it for a couple seasons there, regardless of how that turned out. He was able to do it. Hyde's never had 300 carries in his career, even dating back to college. I think he only had 172 carries in high school combined. So he doesn't have a bell cow back. He's got a quarterback in Gabbard who's not mobile enough to be able to do the things he wants to do on offense. He's got a talent-challenged defense. I mean, as bad as the Rams are, and the Rams have a lot of problems and things, they're not that far away from being a solid team, and San Francisco is just a disaster. I think you're going to see Todd Gurley left, right, and up the middle, and I think it's going to be a big LA win.
All right, let's come home and look at Philadelphia and Cleveland. We'll take a little deeper look into this one. Pete just looked at me when you said the most talently challenged roster in the league, and he said more than the Browns. The Eagles play the Browns this week. If you're Philly, I mean, who doesn't have a overly loaded talent-laden roster, certainly better than Cleveland, you would think. If you're Philly looking at Cleveland, what concerns you?
If I'm Philly looking at Cleveland, I'm concerned that Robert Griffin III, who has played, it's been hit and miss this preseason. But if Robert Griffin III is hit, if he gets plays the way he can play, I think that I think he can have the kind of game that if you're saying if Philadelphia, hey, we've got our quarterback versus him, if he plays to the way that he has on occasion this preseason, I think Philadelphia's looking at it going, we can't match up with that, and that's going to be a big thing. So if I'm them, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that Robert Griffin III, he stays in the pocket and he's going to beat me passing the football, and that's what I'm worried about. I got to stop Robert Griffin III. If I'm them, if I can stop him, I win the game.
If you're Philly, where do you like Philly that you say they got a clear advantage over Cleveland that they can just go after them?
Philly had a fantastic good blocking rate last year. That's a metric I have that measures how good an offensive line is at giving their ball carriers quality run blocking. And that's a lot of that comes from Kelly and his system, but I think they can still do that same thing. I think that Cleveland is okay in that area, but the run defense isn't very good, and I think Philadelphia could lean heavily on the ground game. But the thing is, Cleveland's going to say, hey, we're going to stop your run game. You've got to beat us throwing the football. So Philadelphia's got to find a way to at least hit a big play or two, or at least show we're not afraid to take a shot downfield or two. Because if they try and scale that system back too much and say we're just going to play really close to the best game, they'll be in some trouble. I have a feeling this is going to be one of the lowest scoring games of the week.
Casey, don't worry about the low scoring when you can worry about Carson Wentz. That's what we're worrying about out here. What's your take on him taking more shots down the field? Can the Browns be beat there? And do you think that Carson Wentz is the guy to be able to throw deep on them?
Cleveland had an okay but not great measurement in what I call a bad decision rate, which is how often the quarterback makes a mental error that leads to a turnover opportunity for the opposing team. So the thing is, when you get rookie quarterbacks, even the best rookie quarterbacks will often struggle badly in that metric. Even Eli did, Peyton did, and you can go back a ways, and you can get any quarterback who's a young quarterback is going to have problems with that. So if I'm Philly, I'm not looking to get him in those situations. I might be saying, Dorial Green-Beckham, we brought you in here now. Why don't you go just hit one big play or two? We'll just get you in a one-on-one situation on the sidelines, and Wentz throw it up there and don't underthrow it. Make sure you either throw it to him or overthrow him, but just make sure that defense knows that if they don't do something to stop that vertical pass, that we're going to do it a few times, because Wentz will drop back to the throw. He won't have any problem doing it. So the coaches call that kind of play. So I think they need to do that a couple times and have some faith. And
one thing that Pete did mention there, but Joe Hayden in that secondary, I mean, he could be an elite player at times. So you wonder if the Eagles with Wentz are going to try to avoid his side of the field.
Yeah, and they might even have him. The thing is, if you're Cleveland, do you have him shadow? Because if you shadow, you have some coverage limitations when you do that. I'm not sure, given the Philadelphia wide receiving core, I'm not sure that I have him do that. So it might be, I don't want to say easy to avoid him, but you also might do things, too. If they want to sit him that far off, if he's sitting like 7 yards off and things, start throwing some smoke routes out there. If I'm Philadelphia, I'm trying to find some things that Wentz can do right off the bat and say, look, if they're going to be 7 yards, throw a smoke route, and that's where the receiver just takes a step back and throw it to him at the line of scrimmage. You're basically throwing against smoke. And so I do those things to say I'm going to show Cleveland that we're going to trust this quarterback. We know he's going to make some errors, but if you think we're just going to scale ourselves back and beat ourselves instead of trying to beat you guys, we're not going to do that. So it'll be interesting to see at Philadelphia how much they cut the offense loose.
3 Cleveland defensive backs are 5'11" or shorter. You wonder if DGB at 6'5" gets in the end zone this week. Is he a guy that you, if you're Doug Peterson, try to game plan for? Do you get Dorial Green-Beckham involved?
Yeah, the old story about him is that he tends to take plays off, or tends to take, he doesn't play hard all the time. So if I'm Philadelphia, you're trying to solve that problem long term, but say, look, maybe we just put a few packages in and say, fine, you've got this huge advantage. If we get in the end zone and we've got, we think we can run the football, but if I'm them, I might just throw a jump pass just to say you can't just stop us stopping the run. You're going to have to think about these things. But yeah, if I've got a 6'11 versus or a 6'5 versus a 5'11 matchup on the outside, I can go jump up there. And if I know maybe if I get Beckham or Green Beckham involved early, that he's going to stay mentally focused more later in the season. If I get him involved early, maybe week 2, I won't have to worry so much about if he's going to take a game off or something. Yeah, sure, I want to do that. So if I'm Philadelphia, I'm definitely trying to find a way, even if it's only 20, 30 plays, to get him heavily involved in the game.
Casey, if you're Cleveland, how do you stop Fletcher Cox, or who on the Browns is able to slow him down?
You don't.
Impossible.
You really, in those situations, I mean, if you can, if you've got, you'd ideally like to be able to do some traps and things and make him think before, make him react and have to read before he just gets upfield. Because if you just let him get upfield, you're going to lose that battle way more often than you should. So if I'm them, I'm doing things like that. If I'm them, I'm also trying to do perimeter plays. They have the guys who can't get the outside, and I might even, if I'm Cleveland, I'm saying I may not try and rush up the gut. I may try and say, okay, I'm going to send Duke Johnson to the outside and do some bubble screens, do some jet sweep screens and things, do some things on the outside to get him or some of the other players on the edge and attack the perimeter instead of attacking the middle, because it's just a battle you're not going to win often enough to be able to say that's a part of the game people want to go to.
How about Ray Horton versus Wentz? Do you think the Eagles fans should be concerned about the looks that Wentz is going to get, and will he be confused?
I guarantee he'll be confused. You can absolutely guarantee that he'll be confused, because Horton is superb at putting together game plans that are designed to screw quarterbacks and things. And that's why Philadelphia, it's going to be a big thing to where you really don't want to get Wentz into a situation where he has to start throwing the football, because then it's that kind of situation. This is going to be one of those things where early on, Paul Brown used to have a saying, he said, if you've got trick plays and you want to use them first. Always use them before the other team, because if the other team uses theirs first and they're successful, then they're ahead, and now you're probably not going to be able to use your trick play. If I'm Philadelphia, I might be thinking that and saying, I want to use something, a trick play or something to get me ahead on the scoreboard first if I can do that, because if they get ahead on the scoreboard, that changes the whole dynamic. But if they get behind even 7-0, 10-0, then they got to put Wentz back there in that kind of a situation against a Horton defense. It's a bad place to be.
Casey Joyner for all the NFL at KC Joyner, TFS on Twitter, ESPN.com, NFL Insider. He also covers the WWE for the new ESPN on WWE. So I got to ask you, there's a pay-per-view this weekend. You've got AJ Styles and you've got Dean Ambrose. Who walks out with the title?
I think we just had the thing on ESPN's WWE content where we did a top 10, our power rankings. And in the Power Rankings article, it talked about that this is probably a time to give Styles the belt, to say to give him the rep on the belt that you want to. Because look, Ambrose has had it, and he can carry that. And it's time to say we trust Styles to carry our belt and to be the guy who can, if not be the face of the company, be the face of SmackDown things. So I would, if I'm them, I want to give him that belt and see, is this something that he can carry that championship role? Because if they can get a guy who can carry the championship role, that's a really valuable role for to have in that situation.
It's a thin roster over there.
Yeah, very, very thin roster, and that's where you hope that maybe they, with what's going on in Raw and things, they're going to develop the talent pool. Well, the thing is, they're developing so much talent, they still have more talent than NXT, and you got, if you can move some of those cruiserweights over eventually, yeah, I think it's going to change long term. But right now, yeah, thin roster.
How many radio shows do you do where you get your WWE meshed with your NFL?
I usually have to drop that in there. I usually have to find a way to make a mention. I just did Charlotte just a short time ago, and you would think, they would be talk Ric Flair there. But, yeah, that doesn't come up very often. This might be the only one.
And Mike serves it up on a platter for you. Well, we'll try this, Casey. We'll finish where we began. And with all apologies to Dr. Seuss, I'll throw this out. To sit, to stand, Casey Joyner's analysis on football in the WWE is really grand.
To sit, to stand. He's a stander, he said. By the way, before we let you run, you didn't give us a pick. Philly, Cleveland. Is Philly in trouble at home? Carson Wentz going to win his debut? What do you got?
I flipped the coin on this one for my ESPN picks. I ended up going with Cleveland just because of the rookie quarterback situation. I'm telling you, it was tough. I did, because if Bradford's in there, I absolutely picked Philadelphia. But the rookie quarterback versus Horton, I'm thinking Cleveland wins it. But man, it's a tough call.
That's awful. That's a terrible thought. That
I could see the headline, Horton here's a who, or something like that. I'm just Dr. Seussing out over here.
Yeah, stop it. Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. Casey Joyner with his picks. He takes Cleveland over Philly. You're not gaining any fans here, but we'll talk to you on Monday, pal.
Going heel.